I don't want to zoom this. Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 Wow.
Recording in progress.
Wow. I've decided I want to talk to you this year.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
I
I'm
know your
so
ego needs
lonely.
it. Your ego needs it. So
Oh, it does, man. It does.
I mean,
Oh,
this therapy for you mainly. I mean, Simon, you look very dapper.
well, thank you. Thank you. I went with the houndstooth today.
Houndstooth.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I thought I haven't seen Darian yet this year. I might as well look a little fancy. I like your hoodie.
Thank you. I feel like I gave no effort for you. So
I mean that's a very nice hoodie. I like the
thank
color
you.
too.
I'm really into hoodies. Something different, maroon situation here,
Yeah.
We'll see. Simon, I've missed you, man.
I know.
I'm the one that canceled because I was traveling to the East Coast. It was just hectic, and
And I wept. I wept a lot. I
I
was like,
believe it was you can't talk to me.
I mean, I thought we were friends. I didn't realize this was a chore that you had to talk to me. I think
Oh,
my
it's good
mic
to be
might be a little
back.
hot here.
It's good to be back. It's good to start up kicking off the year of Arbiters of Bad Taste, which with a very interesting movie choice, by the way.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait to get into this with you. Yeah. Give me your first. Oh, well, let's say what the movie is. We
All right,
watched
Glass Onion.
Glass
And
Onion, a
and
Knives
this
Out
is before
mystery.
I get into it, this is a total Simon movie, okay? I'm like and the whole family watched it. I was just gonna watch it, and then they were perusing around, and then they were like, "This is good," and then
Yeah.
everybody watched it. So my first impression was, this is kind of a murder mystery thing, and this is totally Simon. Totally. I thought of you first, my friend.
So, oh man. Oh man, I can't wait for this. This is gonna be so classic us. Okay.
Yes.
What about it? And let me get your take first. What about it to you said this is totally Simon?
One, the murder mystery. I know you like stuff like that,
I
and
love murder
you love
mystery.
it, right? And
Yeah.
we reviewed a movie that was a murder mystery
Yeah,
before,
we did Death on the Nile a few
right?
months back.
Right. And I know you like this detective thing and the whole, and I was like, okay,
Mhm.
this is Simon. This is totally a Simon movie because of this, but also lots of talking,
Lots of
lots of
talking.
talking.
Lots of
Murder
talking.
detective, lots of talking equals Simon.
All right. I'm gonna give you my hot take right out the gate. I hated this movie.
Wow.
I hated it.
Wow. I have to know why.
Um, I hated it for all of the reasons I hated The Last Jedi.
Hmm.
I thought this is dumb disguised as smart.
Ooh.
This is the old, wolf in sheep's clothing kind of thing. And I don't mean the writer director is dumb. I just mean this movie's dumb. There's so much to say about why I think it's dumb. But the telltale sign is that the writer director Ryan Johnson felt the need to tell us it's dumb. The detective Benoit Blanc, he actually yells it in a fit of passion. It's so dumb. Now, when Ryan Johnson has Benoit Blanc do that, what he's trying to tell us is that he knows it's dumb. That's why it's smart. but I refuse to accept that saying your dumb thing is dumb makes you smart.
This is totally you, man.
So I actually I got a little too wrapped up in my thoughts about it.
Mm.
And I actually went online and I read and I listened to positive reviews about the movie because I thought I I must just be wrong. I must just not get it. But every positive review reinforced what I did not like about it. It's like, yes, the things that you are counting as a positive are exactly why I think it's a negative. And I felt really bad actually saying because Ryan Johnson seems to be a really classy, sweet, amazing guy. People seem to really want to work with him. And that shows by how many famous people just showed up to do little things in this movie Glass Onion. There's so many cameos from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Angela Lansbury,
Yeah.
who that happens at the beginning of the movie, and Benoit Blanc is in the bathtub, and all that's kind of stolen from Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, he kind of goes crazy between cases, and you know most cases aren't worthy of his time and talents. And that's what Ryan Johnson's doing here. It's a total ripoff of Sherlock Holmes, and I'm actually fine with that. It's so difficult to come up with new stuff for these detectives to be, especially if you're trying to create somebody who's a little eccentric, who's a little kind of outside the box. What was great about the first movie, and I can't help but compare it to the first one. The character Benoit Blanc, who's played by Daniel Craig, I really love his performance. I think he's wonderful. I think he makes a wonderful detective with that, his crazy Southern accent, and everything. Um, we did not need to know anything about Benoit Blanc's personal life in the first movie. I don't know how well you remember that first movie. I haven't
I
watched it
not that
since.
much. Yeah.
I've only seen it once, and I watched it when it first came out. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I thought it also had huge shortcomings, and I think Ryan Johnson depends on like these little quirks for things. So in the first movie, one of these big quirks was the heroine couldn't tell a lie without throwing up. She literally barfed every time she told a lie. That's humorous. It's fun. It's funny. But capturing the bad guy rests too much on it. It's kind of like a Hardy Boys Nancy Drew thing. It's kind of like a it's kind of like it's written by a teenager. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or for teenagers or something like that. It's so Ryan Johnson. He seems like an extremely intelligent guy. He writes these great scripts. That he shows he has a lot of talent for writing. He really does. But then there's all these things in it where you're just like, he just needed somebody to tell him no, that's lame. You know what I mean? It's like you're 70-80% great, and then you add these things in there. It's like, no, that's lame. And they're
Yeah.
pivotal, important things. And so that's why I just have a real problem with him as a filmmaker, just because I'm just like, it's kind of like that George Lucas thing.
Yeah.
George Lucas was amazing. He created Star Wars. He created, just amazing things. But he needed somebody to tell it. And when he was able to just do it all himself, it really showed that no, he needs people to say no.
Yeah.
He needs people to help him write the scripts and things like that. Because when he does it himself, it's not so great.
Mm.
It's just not so great. And I think Ryan Johnson just kind of suffers from that same thing. I think he's a brilliant guy. I think he's an extremely competent director, but it's in the writing and the execution of various plot points and character points that I'm just like, man, if somebody would have been there to just kind of tighten this up and kind of take it out of this kind of cartoonish teenage kind of thing, then this could have been a lot more interesting. As it was, I found Glass Onion completely uninteresting. I really did. From start to finish, I thought this is completely. Well, I shouldn't say from start to finish. For about 5 minutes, I thought this might be interesting,
This is unbelievable, man.
and
This
then
is
it
the
just kind
total
of did this
Simon.
spiral downward. And it's not the fault of the actors. It's
Yeah.
not the fault of anybody working on the film. It's simply a fault of the writing.
Mm. Wow. I
And
mean,
so, what was your big takeaway from Glass Onion?
I feel like we had a very different feeling about this, which I think is good,
I
actually.
know that's what I would. That's why I did not voice my opinion in the text
You
beforehand, because
clearly
I
did not.
I wanted you to just have your own opinion and to come in and argue with me. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted.
I like the points you're making. I'm like, I see it. I would say like I enjoyed most of it until they started to unravel everything towards the back half. Like you start explaining Janelle Monae's character, that it's her, it's Helen, it's not Andy, and that
And, and that's what I
they
mean.
were,
It's like, and your
that they
whole plot
were
point.
right, they were
Sorry,
working together, and I was like, I'm not sure I needed to know that, like I was like,
it could have been brought out so much in such a more interesting way.
and it was clumsy. I felt the back half very
Yeah.
clumsy, and I felt Ed Norton's character became very pointless towards the back half. It's like, okay, like,
So all of the positive reviews were just raving about how Ryan Johnson brilliantly exposes all these influencers and people like the Elon Musks of the
right.
world and
I'm
stuff
gonna
like
talk
that.
about that because that's interesting to me. But yeah,
So my personal opinion on that was, if he would have had something interesting to say about those people, then that's great. But I there was not a single point in the movie where I thought, oh, that's an interesting take
yeah,
on these influencers and the Elon Musks of the world and stuff like that. It was also obvious, and anybody who already agrees with that perspective already agrees with it. And most people do, I think. Most
yeah,
people do. There's the outliers who actually think these influencers and Elon Musks are like the saviors of mankind and stuff like that. But those are outliers. The rest of us know that, I'm not. You can be an influencer and still be a good person. I'm not trying to say that, but a lot of these, the Dave Bautista, he was kind of parodying the what's his name, Jones, the
yeah. Like he's the Twitch guy.
yeah,
He's trying to be like the
he's
news,
yeah,
Infowars type of guy.
exactly.
Yeah,
Infowars is what I'm trying to think
yeah,
of. Um, and it's just obvious, and it's just like, I mean, there was nothing interesting said about it. There was no new perspective brought forward about it or anything like that. That's my opinion. Somebody
yeah.
else might have thought maybe there was a really hot take on things, but I was like, no, this is just really obvious. This is what we all think already.
I would agree with that. I think that although I do like when that's presented, I did think to myself, this is obvious that these people fit into these categories of people we don't think highly of, or that we think are indicative of not positive aspects of society.
Yeah.
For that,
Now, if anyone would have done anything that would have been outside of the caricature that we already think that person to be, that might have been interesting, but nobody did.
yeah,
Everybody just did exactly what you think they're going to do. Therefore, what's interesting about that?
yeah, yeah.
You know?
It was, I thought what I felt like a little deeper thing was that like people's loyalty extends only as far as it benefits them for that.
Mm,
And that I think that has also been done. I'm not saying that's new. It's not, but I think it's sometimes it is a lesson that we don't think about enough. I
mm.
think that's the larger part of a lot of issues we're having is our loyalty is pretty much to us and not to the greater good of society. And I thought that was a theme. Like, and they made it obvious, like at the end when they're like, I saw Miles with the gun. I
Yeah.
saw, it's like it was really stupid how they did it. But I tried to see the deeper purpose and like, yeah, that's what people do. They try to save their own ass, Like they're not growing this consciousness, generally speaking. I mean,
Yeah,
most people's sympathy for other people extends to themselves, generally speaking.
exactly. This movie is also a comedy, and I tried to take that into
Sure.
account.
Yeah.
And I was just like, so I was trying not to be too harsh with my criticism as I'm watching it. But my problem is that I think too long and too hard about these things, and I end up going further and further into this kind of rabbit hole of
Yeah.
disgust, if you will, where I'm just like, um, I just can't handle it. At some point, I'm just like, why? Why take all of this talent that was
Yeah.
clearly on display and do something so derivative and obvious?
Yeah.
And that's what I actually, as I was looking up reviews and stuff, there were people, websites, who were saying this is one of the best murder mysteries ever.
That's crazy, actually.
For me, that's absolute
That's
insanity.
asinine.
I was like, I guess you've never actually watched any other, especially the classic murder mysteries,
Yeah.
you know. And when I realized about halfway through or so that this wasn't going to be a murder mystery, you know, and I tried to wrap my mind around the disappointment of that,
Yeah.
I was like, because there's no mystery. Once again, one of the themes of it is that the Benoit Blanc detective, he can't do simple things.
No, he can't do Clue. Clue was hard for him,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's like,
because it's too obvious, it's too easy, and he's
yes.
trying to look too deep into something. And once again, it's like that's kind of funny as a side thing, but it's not interesting for your major plot point.
Yeah.
Just like it's not interesting to have the twin
Yeah.
sister. Sorry, spoilers, everybody,
it's,
but
it's been
she's
on
the
Netflix. You
twin.
should be watching it at this
Yeah.
point. Like,
I mean, it's just not interesting. And when Benoit Blanc, he gets mad and he just says it's all dumb and you're just dumb and and everything you've done is dumb. And I'm just like, well, yeah, we don't need Benoit Blanc to tell us that. That's
yeah.
another thing that just annoyed the heck out of me. It's like, I can see that. I don't need Benoit Blanc to tell me that. Now I'm irritated at Benoit Blanc, somebody that I liked.
Yeah. You know what's great about this is like I I don't know if you thought about this, but like when you said Benoit Blanc, it's like the game Clue is like, oh, it's stupid. It's almost too obvious. And you know what the first thought that came in my mind? That's how I think you view movies too. I mean, like,
Shannon is always she's always impressed. She's like, because I've normally figured everything out, beforehand, and it's because and that's not always the case, but I have guesses and suspicions and things like that. And we actually started to watch some new TV show that's also a detective murder mystery thing, and I can't remember the name of it. It's the guy's name. It's like Trevor. I don't know. Anyway, you know, I survived through the first episode and
you
decided that's not
survive.
worth watching anymore. And because it was this similar and same kind of thing where it's just like, they open the show with showing a crime being committed, stuff like that. And already I can see through it because it's supposed to be kind of showing you one thing, but it's really another thing that's happening. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yes.
And I see through it right away. And I turned to Shannon and I was like, oh, he's not really, this. And she's actually, this. And it's a big mistake and blah, blah, blah. And that's exactly what happens, And I'm just like, I'm not a brilliant detective. You know what I mean? I'm not Benoit Blanc. I'm not Sherlock Holmes. So all I ask of if you're going to call something a murder mystery, make it a freaking mystery. That was the other problem with the first Knives
Yeah.
Out movie. is that once again, the guy who is the a-hole turns out to be the bad guy.
Right.
And it's like, well, we already knew he's a bad guy. So why'd you make him the bad guy?
It's too on the nose, right?
I was thinking about this, and I thought about it when I first watched the first Knives Out movie. If you remember, the big thing about the in the first Knives Out movie is the nurse. She's a sweet, nurse, and she's taking care of the old man. And it appears that she mixed up his medication, and it was her fault that he actually died. But he loves her, not in a romantic way, but he just loves her as a human being and leaves all of his inheritance to her, outing all of his family, and things like that out of the will, completely leaving them out of the will. Um, so from the get-go, it's like that somebody else switched the medicine. It's like, okay, she can't have done it. I mean, there's a nefarious person who's done it. The biggest a-hole there, you just assume he's done it, and in the end,
Yeah.
he did it. Big mystery. Wow. And the whole time I'm thinking, how much more interesting would this movie have been if she had actually done it
Yeah.
on accident, accidentally killed her patient, and now she's getting this inheritance, and she doesn't feel she deserves it. And there's a brilliant detective figuring it out, assuming that something nefarious had happened, but nothing nefarious had actually happened. It's just an accident that she's trying to cover up. And maybe in the end, he figures it all out and he allows the cover up anyway, despite his, better judgment, which would have been to show everyone what had happened. And now all these a-holes who aren't guilty of murder still don't get their inheritance, and this good person who just made a mistake gets. I mean, how much more interesting and thought-provoking would that have been,
Right.
than to just have an obvious bad guy who did it? And that's what I'm thinking about in Glass Onion as well, where it's like, how much more interesting could it have been if you're, because what he's doing is he's presenting us a mystery that's not a mystery, and that's the idea of the glass onion.
Right.
It appears to have layers and levels, but it doesn't. It's very transparent. Okay, fine. That's an interesting idea. I mean, it could be an interesting idea, but it has to involve interesting people who are smart and intelligent, who we think maybe could be capable of doing something
Yeah.
interesting. But there's no character in Glass Onion who seems capable of doing something interesting.
This is the best, honestly. You're like, you dive so deep. And you know what? I do too, but I think I have like a stupid brain about movies sometimes too. And I think that's what directors go for, is they go, I think they want to know and have complexity, but I think these are also monkeys. And some level, and they just want to have baboon entertainment. And I think that's probably where I and maybe a lot of other viewers maybe like something like this, because they don't want to think about it too hard. Like,
Yeah.
I have two things. Like, I want to think how I think how you think. And actually, you're screwing movies for me, Simon. I'm serious. Like, because every time I go into this, I'm like, okay, I have Simon brain right now. I'm thinking
Yeah.
like, that's dumb. Wait a minute. How did this happen? And then I have this other brain that's like, I'm just I'm just doing something enjoyable right now.
So I text you that I watched Twins with my kids the other day.
Yes.
Twins is a ridiculous premise. It's so many things that happen in the movie are so unrealistic and far-fetched that they, you sit there in that, I think what you're talking about, suspended, disbelief. You're
Yeah, of
just like, you're
course.
just gonna
Yeah.
go with it.
Yes.
But the movie makes up for all that by being a comedy, B, having wonderful performances by everybody who's in the movie, and C, having so much heart
Yes.
that you just don't care. And in fact, the corniness of it and the heart of it makes it so those things that don't make sense, that are too far fetched to be realistic, you want to go with it now.
Yeah.
You want to believe that Jules can just feel his brother, and he has so much love and such a deep connection to his twin that he can find him, no matter where he goes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so dumb to say out loud. It really is. It's stupid. But because, like I said, because the script is so good, because the acting is so good, you forgive it all. And that's what I thought was so interesting when I took that back and I compared that to Glass Onion. I was like, I mean, they're both equally stupid.
Yeah.
When especially if you're just giving somebody a description, if you just describe what happens in these movies, they're just both so stupid. You're almost embarrassed describing it. So what makes one great and what makes one so forgettable?
Yeah.
For me, anyway. Somebody else, Glass Onion might be their new favorite movie. Fine. It can be. Go with it.
You're like, no, no.
Yeah. If I wasn't so wrapped up in thinking how bad this movie was, it would be so forgettable. But this podcast actually requires me to continue thinking about it.
Yes, it does. It's this is one of the movies I think that we reviewed that like I both agree and disagree. Like
Yeah.
and like really big directions. Like I'm like, yes, Simon, I totally get it because it started to fall apart for me for sure. My daughter was watching it with me very closely. She was like, "What happened in the back part of this?" Like she saw it. She's
Yeah.
11. But then the
Yeah.
other part, I was like, I don't know. It's just kind of entertaining seeing stupid people. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the weird effect that people get with like things like TikTok and all that. You see like stupid stuff all the time. It's really not great. But there's like
Absolutely.
this weird stupid effect that people enjoy about stuff.
Yeah.
And I found myself being wrapped into a little bit of that too. Like, it is entertaining on some level.
Yeah.
Like not amazing, but entertaining on some level.
I Oh man. So, okay, here's a couple of things I did afterwards. Okay. I decided I'm going to watch some really different mysteries. And uh and I haven't been watching a lot of TV and movies. I just don't, I'm
Yeah,
just doing other things. It's so but I decided I'm just going to make some time for it. So after watching Knives Out, I went and watched The Good Guys. Do you remember that
I
movie?
do.
Russell Crowe and what's his name? Gosling.
Hmm.
I don't know your opinion on that one. I think it's superb.
Yeah, it's
I think
it's
that
very
movie
good.
is so good. And especially to watch that movie after watching the Glass Onion movie, it made it even better. All I could do is sit there and marvel at how good the script is, how good the acting is, how good the different plot points are, and even the ones that end up. I mean, it's also a comedy, and so there's just a lot of silliness that happens. There's a lot of serendipity that happens. You know, there's for most of the movie, there's a lack of heroism, that's occurring throughout most of the movie, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Then I watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh man, classic.
Also, just but one of the corniest movies,
For sure.
right? And what's
Yeah.
coming. You know everything is happening. Like Glass Onion. It's just like, yeah, there's twists and turns, but you see it all coming. It's
Yeah.
no mystery to the audience who's watching. Uh, but it's a mystery to the detective in the movie who is just kind of incompetent. I mean, he's not
Sure.
dumb,
I get what you're
but he
saying. Yeah.
just doesn't get it. He's not putting it together. And the reason he's not putting it together is because the plot is so stupid. I mean, in the end, when you find out that it's all about building a freeway,
Right.
So once again, I was like, oh man, this is a moment kind of like this is where Benoit Blanc would step in and be like, this is all so stupid that I couldn't put it together, you know?
Yeah.
But it's so much better. Why is it so much better?
You know what? I think one of the things that's maybe different is like a lot of movies today are trying to emphasize what's wrong with society and then putting it into comedies, putting it into dramas. I mean, anything, any genre, what's wrong with today and what's wrong with the people of today. Whereas like a Who Roger Rabbit, you didn't think about that. You didn't think about any of that stuff. You're just on a ride. You're just on a ride. And you don't have to think about the social commentary of cartoons and people. Like, and these people are, that's what I think the big difference is.
I think you nailed it, man. So this is what I've been so I am completely unfair to Ryan Johnson. I want everybody to know that. Ryan Johnson is a completely competent filmmaker. And so I want everybody to understand that I understand that I am unfair to Ryan Johnson because I'm comparing him to greats, of whom I don't think he is one yet. I think he could become a great. I think he has the talent and the capacity to be a great filmmaker. But as of yet, he's not there.
Yeah,
And somebody that I compared him to was Clint Eastwood,
mm,
who I think is one of the best filmmakers of
for
our
sure,
time.
for sure.
And I'm thinking about the way he does messaging in his movies. The messaging never overtakes the narrative. The story comes first. And the messaging is just kind of in there and you get it and it's profound and it's powerful because it's told to you through the story. One of the most obvious ones I can think of, sorry, is $1 Million Baby.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask anybody what the message is to $1 Million Baby. I don't think I think that movie is too difficult to say there's a definitive message. And I think that's the message of the movie.
Yep.
You think you have an opinion on these things? And now I'm going to show you how your opinion might fail you. The way it failed these characters. The way that love and courage is displayed differently through these characters in ways that we, in our hearts and minds, don't want to think of as love and courage.
Yeah.
That's I don't expect that kind of profoundness out of Glass Onion. I really don't. Okay, I'm not. But to what you were saying earlier, the way that it's so on the nose, I'm just like, give me something that I actually need to think about later. Give me something that I can walk away and think about, huh? Maybe, this or maybe that. But there's no maybes in Glass Onion.
No.
There's no maybes. There's just this is it and there's no other way.
Yeah. And what is it going to accomplish? Like, I thought about this. I'm like, highlighting that these are the atrocities or the different versions of bad people in society doesn't change anything. It doesn't
No,
like, it's not going to cause any sweeping. Like, you know what? I realize that, these are bad people. I'm going to go out and change it. Nothing's going to happen. Like, it's just,
it's punching down.
yeah, it's just exactly. Exactly.
It's like we already know these people are bad. So
Like, I
now you're
already
just
got it.
punching
I
down
got
on
it.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And and so and if you're not going to have an interesting antagonist, then you need to have an interesting protagonist.
yes.
But somebody's got to be interesting. And just nobody is. I'm sorry. There's just nobody is interesting in this movie. Zero.
I think, and think they're like they're trying to, but then it just becomes about the societal commentary. It's clear that Miles Braun is like Elon Musk. It's very clear,
Yeah.
but then he becomes less interesting as the movie goes on. More, and to my thing is the worst thing is they wasted Ed Norton, who was a fantastic actor.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh. Yeah.
fantastic actor.
Yeah.
way better than a lot of those guys who were in there that he was
Oh,
performing with. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he's up there,
By far the best actor in that
like
movie is Ed Norton, and by far the lamest character in the movie is Ed
is Ed
Norton's.
Norton. That's a shame, actually. Like,
I mean, and there were points in the movie where I had hope that maybe it would take a turn.
right.
When Ed Norton's character was begging Benoit Blanc for basically for protection,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, maybe. But by that point, I'd lost hope that this movie was going to be interesting. But I was like, okay, maybe something interesting is going to happen. And then they go through and they show you how, you know, the twin is a plant, and and
Yeah.
then that they're doing this whole espionage thing instead of a murder mystery. It's like they already know.
Yeah.
All they need now is, like you said, it's just like the game of Clue. It's like we know who did it. Now we need to
Yeah.
find out, and we know the motive, and we know the weapon, and now all we need to do is find, the red envelope, which is, and it's just like, I get how you think that might be clever. I get how a person might think that might be clever,
Yeah.
but then go watch the actual movie Clue and see an actual clever movie.
Yeah.
The fact that Clue could have three different endings that all work, that's a clever movie.
Right.
And be absolutely hilarious the entire time with great performances from amazing actors the entire time. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
And here it's just like, I don't know, I just don't know what to say. There's only one way this movie could have ended, and it ended the way it did. I'll tell you, when I almost turned it off when they started breaking all the glass
I
statues.
did. You know what? I did too. And I knew, I said, clearly the Mona Lisa is going to be the thing. I mean, it was
Exactly.
obvious from the beginning, too. That was obvious.
Yeah. It's like you can't put that much emphasis on something and then,
Right. They were
just there's
dangling it
there's no
constantly.
subtlety.
No, there's
There's
no
just no
subtlety.
subtlety.
No,
There's
that's
no
that's what
subtlety
that's what
to
it
it at
is,
all.
Simon. There's literally no subtlety. It's like you're stupid, so you need to know everything that's going to happen so that you don't have to think about it. Just and that's somewhat a commentary on, maybe, I don't know if the directors purposely do that or not, but maybe unconsciously they think this is our audience. They're not exactly heavy thinkers. They just want to be entertained. They're not the Simons of the world. They're just like, they're draconian, mindless robots watching movies who just want things to blow up. I think maybe some of that actually goes into the thought process of focus groups and things of that nature, potentially.
I mean, you're probably right, because they had to end the movie by blowing up the whole
Exactly.
building, the whole. I mean, it was just so silly, and once again, it was like, what is her motivation destroying the Mona Lisa?
Right.
I know that her motivation is to get back at this guy. How does destroying the Mona Lisa accomplish that? How does destroying a priceless piece of art that is widely considered the greatest painting ever created, how is destroying that accomplishing your goal? You've already done it. You're going to expose the thing,
That's right.
the stupid fuel and all that stuff.
Stupid fuel. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but there's supposed to be this empower. So, okay, here's something I want to applaud Ryan Johnson on. He seems like a really woke guy. He's really with it.
Right.
The heroines in both of these Knives Out movies are heroines. They're female. They both happen to be young, beautiful people of, or minorities, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. I think, and they're actually both characters that I like. I just don't like the movie they're in.
Yeah.
Both actresses are fabulous and do a great job with the material that they have. So um, I want to applaud Ryan Johnson for that. And at the same time, I think and I'm trying to think of the way to say this, but the whole female empowerment hindered the movie at the end. And that's when she starts throwing down the glass statues.
Yeah.
Um, because it at that point it becomes this eye roll. It was for you, it was
Yeah, it
for
was
me.
for sure.
I don't need her to do that. I don't need this obvious, visible, physical smashing of things. I wanted her to just outwit him, to just
Right.
outwit the other people. And in order for her to outwit somebody, they have to be smart in the first. Anybody can outwit an idiot. So that's not, so
Right.
that's what I'm kind of getting at. It's like, I want a protagonist who's up against an antagonist that seems to be better than them
Mm.
in every way. And then for that antagonist to overcome. I mean, that sounds formulaic, and maybe it is, but at least it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I find movies today to be very difficult to be great. I just do. I There's something off about movies. I find a lot of series that I like to watch to be very interesting, but movies are a difficult climb for me. I feel like today's movies, it's just very
That's
uninteresting.
why I end up not watching them. That's
Yeah.
why I have better things to do with my time. I
Exactly.
mean, and I'm not trying to sound egotistical about that. I'm not trying to say that I have all these important things to do. But seriously, like almost anything would be more worth my time
Right.
than watching most of the crap that comes out.
Just
Yeah.
why you and I both always, the whole show was like about many times movies from the 80s and 90s. It's like,
Yes.
it's like we're going back and telling you about things that actually we thought were really good, but putting a
Yes.
twist on it. Like a lot of people think these are bad too. Like,
I mean, every era has its horrible, horrific
yeah,
movies, and every era has um, great movies, and we're still people are still making great movies today.
yeah,
I don't want to take that away. I don't want to say that people are not, but it they're we're going through something, and you feel it, and I feel it.
yes,
We're going through something in Hollywood that is just really dumbing everything down. And I hate to say that it's wokeness. I hate to say that it's like Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ plus, because I support all of those things. And I want all of those things to be represented well in our movies. And all I ask is that it be done in an intelligent way in which it's not just, I, I don't know how else to say it. It's just not dumb. I just don't know how else to say that.
yeah,
And I guess it must be just really difficult, like you say, to make a really good movie. It just must be. But when I think of the absolute best movies and I think about how simple they are,
yeah.
I mean, when you break it down, the movie I mentioned earlier, A Million Dollar Baby, that's a really simple movie.
It really is.
It required comparatively almost no budget.
Yeah,
I mean, sure, you had to pay for Morgan Freeman and, you know, I mean,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, but I bet a lot of these people wouldn't require that huge of a salary to do a Clint Eastwood movie.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially that one. I think of No Country for Old Men.
Oh man,
How simple is that
that's
movie?
a crazy simple movie, but very like it moves, man. That thing moves forward on you.
Yeah. It it doesn't even have a soundtrack.
It's crazy, actually.
I mean, that's how simple that movie is.
Yeah,
And in a lot of it, there's very little talking.
it's true.
There's a lot of scenes of staring out into the vast openness, exploring a crime scene that's already happened and just not talking, just looking.
Yeah.
There's I don't know if you can get more simple than those kinds of movies, and they're
Yeah.
so good.
I think one of the other things, I don't know how you feel about this, but I pointed this out in many, many episodes ago. I think, and it was like we really both jived on is that, movies are a reflection of like what's happening in your life or who the human experience. And I think the worst movies, you can't see yourself in the movie. You can't see the humanity in it. You just like in Glass Onion, although I found many parts to be entertaining, I was like, well, this is just a clear societal commentary of wokeness gone forced wokeness with that and then obvious. It's like I don't see myself in this murder mystery. I don't see myself on this island. I don't see anything about this to be realistic about my life or other people's lives in it. It's not a mirror for me. And I think
Isn't that
that's what the
interesting?
superhero movies have done that, I think, to people is while I enjoy some of them, a lot of it is just like, okay, like the best ones make you feel like, hey, man, that's like, I could see parts of that in myself. But then if you can't see the relatability of it, it's difficult. That's what the magic was of Midnight Mass. Mike
Yes.
Flanagan is one of my favorite directors, current directors. He gets it. You could
Yes,
see
he does.
yourself grappling with the same struggles those people struggled with on that island of religion, spirituality, life, death. And by the way, it's a vampire movie. Like
You know,
it's not on the nose that it's a vampire movie or series. I mean, it's not. It's that's the genius in it.
the to your point, the movies that work the best, the the themes, the characters, the conversations, all of that work without the fantasy element.
Right.
You take away the fantasy element and it still works. Everything in Midnight Mass still works, even if you take away the vampirism. Therefore, the vampirism is an extension and helping us see in a more what's the word I'm looking for, grand or just kind of hyper, state of, you know, uh, just putting it all on display for us in that way. And it gives us something else, other than, the mundane everyday,
Yeah.
and it adds this element, to it that I really love. It almost adds like an X-File element to it
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I loved about that, the small town. I love everything in that movie is confined. You know what I'm saying? This
Yeah.
doesn't have world-ending implications. And the way that people in Glass Onion talk about it, it has huge world,
Yeah.
implications, not world ending, but he's trying to sell this fuel that could potentially blow people's houses
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So it has this worldwide implication, and Midnight Mass and movies of its ilk. It's like, no, it's just these people.
It's
It's
just those
just
people.
this little town. It's just this little island. That's the brilliance of putting it on an island, is to isolate it and say this does not have this is not going anywhere else. This is staying here.
Yeah.
This just involves these people. It's brilliant. And the
Yeah.
best X-Files episodes, by the way, are of that nature as well. It just involves a small little group of people. It doesn't have, that when I get bored with X-Files and things like that is when they
Sure.
start doing the the aliens are gonna come and take over and stuff. I was like, all right, I'm not interested anymore. Get back to the little creature in the woods that only
Yeah.
affects like a few square miles,
Right.
that I'm
Yeah.
interested again.
Yeah. It's like the movie Logan. It's if it doesn't need to be in the X-Men universe for it to be great. Like it's just you feel the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
It just happens to be that he's Wolverine.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's a
Felt like
few
the
other.
Captain America movies worked on that level. You know
Yeah,
what I
they
mean?
were
Those were my
very
favorite of the Marvel
yes.
movies because take away Captain America's, super soldier stuff and just make him more like a Jason Bourne type of
Yeah.
person who's highly trained or something, and everything still works.
Yeah.
Everything still works in the Captain America movies. Even that Civil War one,
Yeah.
because that one works because it's about a dissolution of a friendship.
That's
It's
exactly
about,
right.
I mean, that's what it's really about. It's about choosing one friend, literally choosing one friend over another. I mean, that's, if you really go to like
It's
the
true, actually.
playground, the playground version of this, it is like you are displaying loyalty to one friend over another friend. And how does that fall out?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, like we say, it falls out with people with superhero powers,
Right.
just kind of like Midnight Mass falls out with the vampire. So it's this huge escalation of it. But really, when you boil it down, it's so relatable because everybody's probably had to make some kind of similar choice in their lives of, whether it's like a romantic relationship or
Yeah.
just a platonic relationship where you've had to maybe, and maybe you've made the wrong choice sometimes. Maybe,
Right.
what you were saying earlier, loyalty to self first. Maybe
Yeah.
you saw that, or we saw, I should say, that our loyalty to one friend or acquaintance would be more advantageous to us. So we chose that over.
Yes.
So these themes are so relatable
They're
that
relatable.
that's why the movies work.
Yeah. And I think that's why you said we're going through something here in this time with movies and stuff. And I think that's what it is like maybe these directors, the studios, they're like, well, these make a lot of money when we put it out and we kind of appeal to the lowest version of watching a movie. Bang, blow up, boom, get some big time people. Let's get The Rock in there. Yes. Let's this is like, oh, let's do that. Versus like this overarching emotional hammer it home. This is what it means to be human. And it's like I feel like there's a struggle to make that type of movie. And it's like, okay, is it gonna be Avatar? Is it gonna be Captain America? Is it gonna be Avengers? Or are we willing to make something that's really has a lot of heart and exposes what it means to be a person? I mean, you can kind of do both if you're good at it. I mean, it's like I don't know
The
that many people are that good at it. I
the,
mean,
the
it's
best
just not.
directors do. The best directors are, I think, they're brothers, right? They did a couple of the Captain America movies, and
The
then they
Russo
did,
brothers, yeah.
okay, and then they did a couple of the big Avenger movies. I think they
Yeah.
did the two biggest ones, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that
End
them?
game and all that, yeah.
I mean, those guys are master craftsmen.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys separate, the men from the
They
boys when it
do.
comes to taking all of these, ridiculous, silly characters out of comic books and creating stories and narratives and directing these stories and narratives in a way that are impossibly big,
Yeah.
and yet we can all relate to them. Like we all, you know what I mean? There's so
Yeah.
much emotion
So much emotion.
in those movies. One of the scenes I was most impressed with of any Marvel movie was when we see Fat Thor for the first time.
Yeah.
Chris Evans in that scene. People don't give these actors enough credit. He's having to talk to somebody who's pretending to be like a little raccoon
Yeah.
and somebody who's pretending to be an 8 foot tall green behemoth. And then
Yep.
another guy is pretending to be like a 7 foot tall, like rock thing,
Yeah.
all while he's pretending to be, Thor, the god of thunder, who's horribly depressed and going through an existential crisis. That scene is so good. And anybody who's interested, just go back and just watch that scene and think about all those little aspects of it and think about the acting that guy Chris Evans, is
Yeah,
that
Chris
right? Is he
Evans.
Thor?
Yeah.
Think about the acting he's doing in that scene. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just that's off the charts acting.
Yeah.
And I don't care that it's a silly superhero movie.
No, it's
That acting is off the charts.
but there's lots of and it's great because that franchise is funny to me because there's lots of excellent actors. And I think case in point, again, this feels like we're pulling, what's great is the beginning of the year and we're pulling back stuff from last year a little bit too.
Yeah.
We
Oh yeah.
reviewed Wind River. Honestly, one of my
Oh,
favorite movies.
that really is.
I'm talking like it's up
That's a
there
movie
for
that
me.
sticks with you.
It's that thing
That's a
sticks
movie
like
that
the
haunts
cold
you.
weather in that
Yes.
movie. It
Yeah.
is like Jeremy Renner, Elizabeth Olsen. You're like, what the hell? like and you feel the reservation, the uncomfortableness, the mystery, the sorrow. You feel the sorrow. You feel the toughness, the grit. You know.
That's a movie that puts female empowerment on display in a way that is so great and
Yes.
so relatable. I mean, we talked about that scene where he lets the guy go at the end, but
Yep.
he tells him how the girl that they killed, she lasted like 6 miles or something like that in her bare feet and stuff like that. He's like, I'll give you like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
difference between just saying that out loud just gives me
Chilling.
chills.
Yeah.
I mean, that is if you're wanting to do, the LGBTQ plus, the minority, the female empowerment stuff, that movie is the right way to do it.
Right way to do it. Yes.
Elizabeth Olsen, awesome. She's not
Yes.
some invincible, super smart, all this stuff. No, she's a hardworking young agent who's just trying to do the right thing. She needs help. She gets shot. Luckily, she's wearing her Kevlar and stuff,
Right.
but she's not invincible,
Not
but
invincible.
you're rooting for her the whole time. You want her to succeed the whole time. She's a strong, amazing character, and she breaks down crying because she's a real person.
Yeah.
She's a real person. And when we see a lot of these movies that are doing the empowerment thing, they're not real people.
No.
They're not believable. We don't relate to them. I don't feel empowered by them. I can't see how a woman or a minority can feel empowered by some of these people that are completely unrelatable and they're not real. They're just not real people.
Yeah.
It's like I can't really relate to Superman.
Of course not.
Even though he's one of my favorite characters of all time and I have so much to say that's great about Superman, but I can't really relate to Superman
Yeah.
because he's too great to be real. I can't.
Right. It's too great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's too perfect.
Yeah.
He's too powerful. He can do too much for me to be able to relate to that.
Yeah. That's
So I
totally
don't feel
true.
empowered by him.
No. No,
As a
you may be
man, I don't
entertained.
feel empowered by him. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are stories that I think are beautiful and they show different aspects of humanity in a wonderful way. But Superman himself, yeah, there's it's like saying I can relate to God. It's like, no,
Right.
I can't really relate to that. you know.
Well, it's interesting. I think James Gunn, he tried to flip the Superman story on its head with Brightburn and make Superman evil. And
Yeah.
that what if Superman wasn't the hope of humanity, but was essentially just an evil alien from another planet, and the same story, but that, there he wants to take over the planet.
Yeah.
And
He's a
it's
bad
bad.
seed.
Yeah, he's a bad seed. And I mean, the acting was not good in the movie. I watched it not that long ago, but I appreciated the try to flip it. But it's kind of like in the end, I
Conceptually,
still
it's very interesting.
it's yeah, it's
Unfortunately,
like
in execution, it
in
wasn't.
execution, it's like but then again, I also have like I had this bias of like, well, I just don't want him to be like this. I don't want him to be evil. Like,
Yeah.
but then like how could he be more like that's probably more realistic. Like, is he just going to be like completely docile towards humans like an alien? Maybe, probably not. That seems too perfect. But is he
Yeah.
going to be completely evil too? uh, I don't know. I like a superhero to me or any character that struggles with power. Like they struggle with it.
Yes.
Like they have it'd be kind of like I like this kind of thought experiments. Like if we woke up tomorrow and every human had a superpower, I think it would be massive chaos. Massive chaos.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be good. It
No.
would not be, it would be a huge struggle. And you would have people who would be like, I don't want this. I do not want this.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's the best superpower you could think of, I don't want this responsibility.
Yeah.
I like when people struggle with the responsibility of something. That's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is, um, that is that. I feel like a lot of those themes come to bear in nature versus nurture.
Yes.
So what if Superman had been found by terrible parents,
Right.
you know? And that goes to what you're saying. It's like, what if we wake up tomorrow, we all have superpowers?
Yeah.
Well, some of us have been raised in such a way that we would want to do good with our powers or whatever. And some of us, maybe we're the Danny DeVitos of the
Yeah.
world and we just want to like take advantage, you know? And that's what I was thinking about the twins thing. There's a wonderful moment in Twins where they don't call it that because they
Yeah.
don't want to be so on the nose with it, but they talk about nature versus nurture, you know. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is, yeah, maybe he is genetically superior to Danny DeVito, but he also was given all of the advantages of a wonderful, virtuous life, whereas
Yeah.
Danny DeVito's character was not. He was given basically the opposite of that. And how would that have changed if they, you know, if one had gone one way and one, you know, it's
Yeah.
that right there is another, you know, nature nurture is such an interesting thought experiment on its own. You know, I have 5 kids, and I am convinced that they would all be wonderful people no matter who raised them.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just talking about this with somebody the other day, and I was telling them, you know, the so I don't accept responsibility for my kids turning out so wonderful because I just think they were already wonderful. I really do. However, the greatest compliment that I've ever received out from outsiders are when, and this happened multiple times over the years, teachers and people like that have told Shannon and myself that they can tell that our kids come from a loving home,
Yeah.
that our kids are loved at home. That's the only thing I can take credit for, really,
Yeah.
is that I have loved my children, and I've done it in the best way I know how,
Yeah.
and I've tried to show through that example to them how to love. But they keep on proving that they're better than me. My children do. They just keep proving that they are more virtuous. They're just better people. So how can I take credit for them being good when they're better than me?
And for you, I think knowing you a little bit, and you have a larger family than I do, and you have different aspects of your kids that you accept and you cheer on your children's different personalities, identity, how they feel about themselves, and when some of those things are maybe opposite of your own deal, you
Yeah.
you you always love them, you care about them, you talk with them about it, and that's, to me, that's parenting. You providing love, and because it's a weird thing, like having a child. That child can be
It
from
is.
you, or in my case, adopted, and they could be very much like you or completely opposite of who you are. Like, I'm
Yeah.
talking completely opposite. You still have to provide the love and accountability in the environment.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned, you know, in your case, adopted, because I think um, being a parent is celebrating diversity.
Yeah.
So whether you're a parent like me of multiple children with
Yeah.
multiple different personalities, or you're taking on somebody who isn't even your offspring, you know, so you can't really know, you know, most of the time through adoption what that kid kind of inherited from,
Right.
you know, from who or what, you know. And
Yeah.
so you're really playing I mean, whether you have your own children or you adopt, you're always playing the lottery there. You know,
Yeah.
you
It
never
doesn't
know what
matter,
they're
man.
yeah.
You're like, well, what do we got here?
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah. But that's when you're celebrating diversity, because you have to accept from the get-go that your child is not going to be you.
Yeah.
And accept is the wrong word. You have to once again celebrate
Yes.
that they are not you. And you know, the parents that have the heart, that struggle the most, I think, with their children are the ones who are not celebrating the fact that their children are not them. And maybe in that way, I should be celebrating Ryan Johnson, even though he's not my child. but he is so far from me.
Yes.
I guess in my personal taste for what makes a good movie, that maybe I need to be instead of tearing him apart, I need to be celebrating that he's a voice of diversity.
And I like the voice of diversity, but this is my thing with current movies too. It's like the forced diversity of
Yes.
or the forced wokeness. Let me be clear, like I enjoy diversity as a person who is from an underrepresented population of people. I want to see more black people in things, but I
Yeah.
do not want to see more black people in things if it's like, listen, hit me over the head with it, hit me over the head with it. I'm going to force these characters into this to satisfy a social quotient. That I'm not
Mm-hmm.
into. I'm not into
Yeah.
that. Like, but so there's two sides to it for me, you know.
And that stuff is tricky. I think about this, and of course I'm thinking about it from a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white male
Blonde
perspective.
hair
So
dye.
yeah.
Love those. By the way, love those. They get better every time.
Oh, thanks. um, but I went on with my kids with the Disney service, streaming service, whatever it's called, Disney Plus. Um, and they have a whole section of celebrating Black voices, I think is what they
Yep.
title it. It's like, okay, well, what about Native American voice? What about Chinese? What about Korean? What about all this stuff? Um, and when I think about that, I was like, oh, I'm starting to sound like All Lives Matter over here, which I don't mean to be. And I am all for the celebrations of Black voices and things like that. But to your point though, um, I also or and also to our previous point, I also want some subtlety about it.
Yes.
You know what would celebrate Black voices the most? Making great movies with Black people in them.
Right.
Make
Exactly.
a great dang movie.
Yes.
That's the best way to celebrate anybody. It's not to just make a movie with them, it's to make a great movie. The
Yes.
best movie you can possibly make. That's what celebrates.
Exactly. That was the problem with the movie Eternals. They literally forced every type of person to be in that movie, and it wasn't good. If it was a great movie, I'd be like, okay. I mean, like, it's not a good movie. Like, it's
Yeah.
just like trying to fulfill a quotient here. I like a
Yeah.
quota here. Like, what
So
is
what does
this?
it? Yeah. So what
Like,
does
what
it
is
matter?
this?
What does it matter? It's like I'm glad those people have jobs. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're just talking about from an artistic standpoint, what does it matter? And from a social standpoint, what does it matter to make something that is so easily forgotten?
Mm. That's a big statement right there. What does it mean to make something that's so easily forgotten? Ugh. That's a big one there, actually. That's a big
They
one.
they just unveiled that new huge statue of the Embrace, Dr. King and his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and that's had a lot of
Yeah.
people with different commentaries about it.
Just slightly. Like,
Yeah. But I tell you what, that ain't gonna be forgotten.
no, no. And I'm gonna tell you, like, this is actually today someone asked me, what's your favorite, what are some of your favorite podcasts? People ask me this a lot, actually, because I make so many podcast episodes. Like, what do you
Yeah.
like to listen to? This is the honest truth, Simon. It's the honest truth. I would never lie to you. I said, what's one of your favorite podcasts to listen to? I said, it's actually from one of my good friends named Simon. I was like, I love his podcast. I was like,
Man,
it's like
that means so
really,
much to me.
really good. And like if it wasn't, I just wouldn't listen to it. I just wouldn't. Like it's really good because it's memorable. It's
Mm.
always, and I find like the blonde hair dye ad, that thing makes me laugh so hard. I like to laugh. And I was like, this stuff's
You know,
cracking me up. But then it's serious too.
yeah,
And there's just so much depth to it. And your performance, let's just call it, it's a great performance, is
it
what
is a
it is.
performance, is
It's a
what it is.
performance.
Yeah.
It's excellent because it's memorable to me, type of
Mm.
thing. Outside of our friendship, it's just memorable.
Well,
And
thank you. I mean,
seriously, I mean that.
that means so much to me. It's like, I've been having some of these conversations. Somebody, a friend of mine who just clued into it and was listening to it, and they were coming back and talking to me about it, and um oh gosh, so they were wanting me to go all out on something. They're just like, you should really just go all out on this. And I said, I can't. And they're like,
Yeah.
why? I was like, I've got to trickle it in,
Mm.
because if and I actually described it this way. I was actually talking to Shannon about it last night too. I was saying, I'm too much. I've got to be more like Satan than God.
Mm.
God comes down, if he wants you to know something, he writes it on stone tablets and he says, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. That's not how Satan operates. Satan just whispers and nudges and does things like that. Well, if you're reading the Old Testament, who's more successful in getting their ideas out there?
Yikes.
so so instead of beating people over the head with stone tablets and saying, do this, don't do that, it's like I'm just trying to trickle it in a little bit at a time. And I think that's the way to influence people. Going back to what we're saying before, subtlety, subtlety. I don't
Yeah.
need, heaven knows we don't need any more bricks through our windows,
Right.
telling us about what we should and should not be doing, who we should and should not be. But if you can subtly infer things in an artistic way and make people think and say something that might actually stick with them, and not stick with them because they got it in the moment. Make it stick with them because they had to think about it later.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, once again, that's the whole problem with Glass Onion. There's nothing to think about later. Seriously,
I agree. I'm going to agree with that. I will agree with that point.
it's like we got it in the moment. There's nothing to think about later. There's nothing to debate other than whether you liked it or not. But as far as the themes and the plot points and all these different things of, who's good and who's bad and who made a good decision, who made a bad decision, there's nothing to debate.
Yeah. That's true. I think that's why like we go back to these movies and different things because they really grab us on a regular, like we really think about it. Like, man, like there's nothing better than to be for me laying down and my mind's wandering and it comes to a movie that I'm thinking about. Like, why did they do that in that movie? Like, what would I have done that? Like I start asking all these questions about it. That is the fault of Glass Onion is it's very vapid in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like you're like, okay, that's supposed to be this person. That's supposed to represent that person. Duh. Now of course it's ending. It doesn't give you that sense of like, man, I just didn't see that coming. Like wow, why didn't I see that coming? Like, what
Yeah.
about me? Like I couldn't see that, you know?
Once again, even if you just compare it to another silly comedy, the movie Clue,
Yeah.
which it keeps referencing throughout its own movie, the way that Clue could end in at least three different ways that it shows, um, it actually leaves a question mark in your mind.
Yeah.
Which ending's the real ending? Which way did it actually happen? You know? Yeah. And so uh, that's that's what makes a mystery
Yeah.
when it has different possible conclusions. In the end, it did happen a certain way. But even then, maybe there's some doubt.
Yeah.
Maybe there's, you know,
Yeah. I always think about I don't know if you ever seen the movie Mystic River before. Remember?
yes,
Man,
another Clint Eastwood.
I mean, great acting. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking high level acting. But the end of the movie pissed me off. My wife always, Michelle's always like, I know how much you can't stand the end of that movie. I was like, yeah, because I'm fighting something that I feel is a natural urge for people, which is to have closure to something.
Mm-hmm.
And in that movie, at the end, and Sean Penn is there, you're like, what?
Yeah.
why didn't something happen to him? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I was all worked up about it. But that was the drop.
Yeah.
It's like maybe something did happen to him at some point down the line, but not today, baby.
Not today. You don't get the satisfaction of knowing.
Not today.
Because we're not going to tie this up in a tidy little bow.
Yeah.
The humanity's too complex for that.
Exactly.
So if you're going to make a movie that actually displays humanity, you can't make a movie that ties everything up in a tidy little bow. That's fantasy.
That is fantasy. That is fantasy. But people want things they want it to be wrapped. They want certainty because that feels good. Okay, open, shut. But how many things in life are just like out there and you're like, when is this going to get resolved? Like, and like think of somebody's familial trauma, whatever. That trauma lasts so long and it's just ongoing and ongoing. And sometimes there's actually never a resolution between two people ever.
Sometimes you think you've got closure, but then something creeps up again.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's humanity. That's
Yeah.
just who we are. We don't heal perfectly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we heal, but it's not perfect.
Yeah.
I retold kind of the Job story in my own podcast, and I reference that. I say, God gives him another 10 children at the end, but that doesn't replace his first 10 children.
No.
He doesn't just all of a sudden have 10 children. He forgot about the other 10.
Yeah.
I mean, but sometimes we read these stories or we watch these movies and we do come to these ultra simplistic conclusions.
Yeah.
Throughout my entire life, up until the last few years, when I kind of reignited my appreciation for the book of Job, it's actually been more like 10 years ago when this kind of happened. But just to say, even then, so for the first 35 years of my life, knowing that story, growing up in a Christian household, knowing the story of Job, understanding it, having read it multiple times, things like that, I went for the simple conclusion that everything's fine now. Job's fine now.
Mm-hmm.
Job is better off now than he was before. He's more rich now at the end than he was before. So everything is fine. Happily ever after. Which you and I know is being two happily married guys.
Yes.
Happily ever after is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're happy, but life is hard.
That's right.
It didn't get easier when you found the person that you're gonna spend the rest of your life with. It actually probably got harder.
Correct. It's the same thing with faith. Faith doesn't make things easier. It's not like, oh man, I'm good now. Like I gonna have no problems after because I believe. Like,
Yeah.
you actually may have a lot more problems. It might be more money, more problems, more faith, more problems might be popping up.
Oh yeah. I mean, gosh, I mean, if you believe in a God like the God of the story of Job, then the more righteous you are, the more challenges you're gonna have, like the harder challenges you're gonna have. So that's why I try to be, unrighteous completely.
Yeah.
Complete heathen. Then God's like, oh, I don't need to test him because he's not worth my time and effort. He's already doing so much stuff wrong.
He's ripping these movies all the time.
Yeah.
He's ripping Ryan Johnson's movies.
God has never gone to Satan and said, have you considered my servant Simon?
I mean, he's out there.
Yeah.
Satan was like, not really.
Satan's like, not interested.
Like,
this not.
I already know this story. I'm interested in other people.
Satan's like, he's trying to do what I'm doing, and I don't like it.
It's a little too on the nose for me,
Yeah. I'm trying to insidiously perpetrate the minds of people, and that's what he's doing. I don't care for a copycat. I don't like that at all.
Imagine that conversation. I mean, the guy is doing Jesus the bastard. That's my move. Like, that's literally my move.
Yeah. God's just up there thinking, yeah, yeah, forget it. Let's move on. Let's
I
move
mean,
on.
I love this guy.
Let's
I
move
mean,
on.
I kind of have to, but
Yeah.
this one tests
um,
me.
to the point we made earlier, if God is literally Father, then He's got to celebrate diversity. So
Right.
He's got to love me. You gotta
Just has to.
to quote that old series Dinosaurs from the '90s. I'm the baby. Gotta
I'm the
love me.
baby. Well, I think it's always like, I think one of the things is, it's funny about talking about movies. It always lends itself to other things in life. And certainly, I mean, I think you can go to almost every episode we've done, and there's a God discussion in every episode, which is funny, I think, because it just feels like it always leads back to it, with
It
that.
has to. I mean, if you're going to
Yeah.
talk about, even if you and I were both complete atheists, we would have to bring God into the discussion because, faith is too infused in the culture of the world.
Yes.
So you can't, you know, uh, have a discussion about values, about humanity, about culture, about any of these things without invoking, at least ancient scripture.
Yeah.
You just can't because it's been too influential in art in every place and around the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's always just like you say, it's like a natural
Yeah.
evolution of a conversation if you're going to talk about higher things to talk about faith, even if you don't have it.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I feel like, I think we've been good for each other on that. I actually have talked to a lot of people about this. Simon, I talk about you way more than I should be, by the way. It's annoying. It's a little annoying. Like, as I told
Oh
Michelle the other day, I
man.
said, I feel like one of the reasons why I really like Simon is I think we're both on a very similar path with spirituality, in the sense that we both believe, but we're unafraid to question a lot of things
Yeah.
within it. And I think that's actually a healthy place to be. I really do. And I think sometimes that throws people off to say, hey, listen, there's a blindness here you're going with that you need to get rid of. Like, you can still believe, but be challenging also at the same time. There's
If you
nothing
take
wrong
that
with
as an analog to our movies about, or sorry, our conversations about movies, that's what we're talking about with a writer
that.
director like
Right.
Ryan Johnson. It's like, I think you're great.
Yes.
I think, or you're competent and skilled and creative and talented, but here's the crazy blind spots that you have in your filmmaking that are just keeping them from becoming great. And and so I always want people to hopefully take my criticisms of these movies with that kind of spirit in
Yeah.
mind, because I'm not coming from a place of hate. Even if I hated the movie, I'm really not coming from a place of hate when I criticize things. I really, and I feel like you and I, as when we talk about Christianity, we're not coming from a place of hate.
Oh.
We're coming from, when we level our criticisms, it's not, oh, we hate Christians and we hate these
Oh.
people and things like that. It's that there is so much potential for greatness. And once again, I don't think you have to be a believer or a person of faith to see the potential for greatness just in the metaphor of Christianity
Right.
or other religions. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
Christianity. It can be Judaism. It can be
Hmm.
Buddhism. Any other religion um, that teaches good things.
Right.
But I would even go as far as to say Satanism, which is a very misunderstood belief system. But there's metaphor there that can enrich humanity on such a scale, and it has enriched humanity on such a scale. But unfortunately, we've also diluted it just like what we're talking with filmmaking.
Yeah.
The messaging, the more in your face the messaging is, the more diluted it feels.
Thank you. There's another aha moment. And that's what people have problems with when it's like you just push it into their face. It's like, okay, I don't want this. I'm not into this.
Yeah.
Come on. It's got to be some nuance to this. It can't be like, you're going to die. like, strike ye down.
Yeah.
Like,
Even somebody like me, who I consider myself an ally to all the stuff, I'm the woke idiot ally, but the more in your, I start all nearly siding with the opposition because I'm just like, can we just have a nuanced conversation?
exactly. Does it have to be fire and brimstone? I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
geez,
you know.
man.
Because all I have is I just have all this love in my heart for all kinds of people from every
Yeah.
walk of life. And I just want us all to be successful and happy and feel fulfilled and satisfied with the lives that each of us are able and capable of leading. Um, but when you get too preachy at me, you lose me.
You lose me too, man. It can't
even if
be that.
even if you're saying things I agree with, you lose me.
Yeah. And that's the kind of comparison with the movies. Like you said, it's like, okay, you have to think that I'm smarter than this. like that I know that there's a layer you're just not trying to get to for me.
Every accusation that Ryan Johnson levels against, the type of caricatures that
Yeah.
he presents in the movie, I agree with, and I still hate
Right.
the movie.
Yeah.
So
It's just,
because it's not a conversation.
yeah.
That's something I really believe in. I actually, in that little book I'm working on, I actually say
Yeah.
that in the preface of the book. I say this book is meant to be a conversation, and I really believe that about all works of art. This is not a hard stance that I'm taking on all
Yeah.
these things, and I'm immovable, on all this stuff. This is supposed to be a conversation that I'm trying to have with you, the reader, Um, but I can't be there in person. I can't, so this is a conversation that you read, and then the conversation is between your brain and my written word. You know what I'm saying? um and that's what great films are. It's a conversation between the film and our ponderous minds.
Yeah.
If you give me nothing to ponder, then it's not a conversation anymore. You're talking at me, not to me.
Yeah. That's interesting. The man, how many parallels is that to spirituality and religion and stuff? It's like you're gonna be a zombie and you're gonna sit here and you're gonna take all this in and you're never gonna question anything about it.
Yeah.
You're gonna watch this movie and a bunch of stuff's gonna blow up and you're not gonna think about anything. You're never gonna question it. It's like the box office is
I
gonna be strong. I'm like,
I was just talking to a friend who's telling me that they think they're going to stop going to church. And it's for
interesting.
the reasons we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And I totally get that.
Yeah. You preach at them. Now, if you've already drunk the Kool-Aid, and you're there because you already, yeah. Okay. So here's a big problem I have with faith in a congregational way.
Mm-hmm.
If I already agree, why am I here?
Mm.
So, and if you're just going to tell me things I already agree with, how am I ever going to learn?
Mm.
So if I'm going to go and attend church, I'm sorry, but you've got to be a little more controversial.
Agreed.
You you've got to tell me something that maybe I don't agree with.
Yeah.
And great teachers and great pastors have a way of doing that that brings you into the conversation. It doesn't ostracize you because you don't agree. It brings
Yes.
you in,
Yes. This, you
and
know
it
what,
helps.
this reminds me of, I had a guest on yesterday and they said this was a public speaking expert and it was interesting. She's from Pakistan and she had a very interesting take on cultural conformity
Mm.
and she has purple hair and we were bonding over her hair and stuff. But she says, you know, like the best speaking and best messaging is through this. She said this principle called the Maya principle. I had never heard of it. I was like, I don't know what this is. She goes, well, it's a moderately advanced yet acceptable idea. It's like, now where it
I love
goes
it.
beyond is once that goes, if it's an advanced idea, but it's completely inappropriate and over the top, that becomes extremism at that point. But people will follow you if you have a moderately advanced idea, but it's acceptable, moderately advanced yet acceptable. And I think for me, like I want to be open. I've struggled with church tremendously. Like I physically haven't been to church in a couple of years, but I attend the church that I am a part of in Las Vegas that I've been a part of for 20 years online. I never miss a week ever. I
Mm.
just always watch it, right? So, and it's primarily because the pastor of that church, who's been the pastor since the first day I was at that church 20 years ago, he seems, one, he's funny. I like people who are funny. But
Yes.
two, he seems incredibly flawed. Like he wears his flawed nature in his sermons. So I like movies. I relate to him. Like
He's
he's like, you
human.
know, I watched the Dallas Cowboys, his favorite team. He's like, you know, and I watched the game and I lose my religion a couple times when I'm in there. And we both know he's dropping F bombs, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
I like that. I like for
Yeah.
my pastor to curse here and there. That's controversial because this person is supposed to never be like this. They're
Yeah.
supposed to never utter these types of things or, slip up here and there. That's not the type of person I want to be around. Like, I just don't.
It's not interesting.
It's not interesting.
And when I use that word interesting, people might think I'm using it maybe in a passive way. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm bored. This isn't interesting. It's like, no, I'm using that in a very uh, profound, I'm trying to use it in a profound way
Yeah.
to where thought provoking.
Yeah.
You're not capturing my imagination.
Yeah.
If something doesn't capture my imagination, why am I involved in it?
Right.
Especially when it's an extracurricular. It doesn't have to do with, hunting, gathering,
Yeah.
shelter, you know, the things that we have to do to survive. So if it's an extracurricular, which faith is, to put it bluntly, faith, church, all that stuff is an extracurricular because we don't need it to survive. Ask any atheist. They're doing
Right.
just fine.
Right. Right.
So if I'm going to participate in this extracurricular, you better captivate me. And that goes for movies, it goes for politics, it goes for anything you are putting out in front of me and you expect me to participate in. You better captivate me or else I'm
Yes.
out.
That's exactly right. It's exactly, and that's kind of been that's kind of been my stance. And it's just my wife and I are very similar. I said, listen, this has to really speak to me. And I know, it's like this is the honest truth. Like this is so funny to me. It's like when our pastor, when he goes on vacation and stuff, he's literally said this. He goes, I want you to still watch the message. I know everybody thinks like I'm the guy, but there's other people that God's working through. Yeah, he's saying that because people are like, this other guy's not that interesting. like, or this other person is not pulling me.
Yeah.
And I tell my wife all the time, like it or not, that's part of it. Like, you may have the same conviction, but if you're not pulling me, I don't know. I'm not going to that movie. I'm like, that doesn't mean my faith is any less because I didn't want to hear this guy speak or this woman speak.
Yeah.
Like when I was like, sometimes when others happen, I go, I told my wife, I got this great podcast I love listening to, Science Plus God. It's because I know I'm never going to hear that at that church about that.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
need other supplemental material that I find a little more controversial that pulls me in. I get different views of my spirituality. That's where I'm at. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it.
And I want to clarify something for anybody listening. When I use the term controversial, and I think you're using it in a similar way,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about oh, I support Putin or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
No,
like, no,
no.
that's not the controversial I'm talking about. When I say controversial, I mean it's something that I either hadn't contemplated, or I mean it's something that when I first hear it, I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that or not.
Yeah.
But it causes me to ponder. There's a controversy in my mind over
Yes.
this concept. And that happens oftentimes when we hear truth, because it's not a truth that we have are accustomed to. So I can't speak. Controversy. It's my dentures, I have the worst dentures on the planet, man. They're all crooked. But anyway, th- th- we need controversial things happening. We need um uh, if you put it into maybe like a health aspect, you need micro tears and
Yeah.
micro breaks in your bones and all these kinds of things in order to grow stronger, in order to become the strongest and best version of ourselves. And our minds need the same thing. And if you just keep hearing the thing that you already agree with over and over again, there's no room for growth there.
No.
So you need to hear stuff you don't agree with so that you can ponder it, because a lot of that stuff that you don't agree with today is actually tomorrow or the next day or the next year, you'll be like, you know what, that's actually right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we need time to grow with it.
We need time to grow with it. And you need to have, I just like, I feel like, what's the resources you're into? And like, I understand your friend saying like church thing. I was like, yeah, I said, because I think that's also going through a big change right now. It's like we're in a different time with movies, with church. I mean, with how we see representation in people, politics, whatever. And it's a shakeup time. And I think if you're on the side of like just traditionalism and you just want things to be how they used to be all the time, I mean, sorry.
Good
Like,
luck.
good luck, man. I mean, you're going to be in that dead church that has, a couple people in there doing the same old thing, talking about the same old things, and you're just going to lose people. You know, things are moving forward, and how we receive things, I think, are moving forward. And I think people are scared of that sometimes. I'm not scared of that. I don't feel that I'm a lesser believer because I get my resource in a different way from someone. Like it's just, or that I question, like, if the church has a stance of like on gay marriage or lesbianism or gender identity, and it's like they just don't even want to talk about it. It's a sin. I can't get that resource. I can't be a part of that resource.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got to get it in a different way because this is an old idea. Like that is not, this actually isn't what you think it is. Like, come on, it's time to move on. Like,
I listened to a debate recently between an atheist guy and a Christian guy,
yeah,
and it's silly, right?
yeah,
Trying to um the my compliment to the atheist is that he was not trying to prove that God does not exist. His point was that we just don't need God
mm-hmm,
in order to be good people.
yeah,
And I was like, well, yeah, I totally agree with that. Some of the best people I know are atheists.
right,
It's anecdotal, but I know that if I decide right now in this moment that God doesn't exist, I'm not going to turn into a bad person.
yeah,
I'm still the same me. And so it really has nothing to do with it. But and what I would my criticism of the Christian guy was that he was spending so much time trying to prove that God exists And that's why we are moral, good people, is because God exists. And I was like, well, I don't know. The problem is that you can't prove that.
You can't prove it. No.
So why are you wasting your time trying to prove that? Just say something that's interesting. I mean, I know that sounds really simplistic,
Right.
but really, like, bear with me here. It's like, I don't need somebody to prove the existence of God. I just need you to say something interesting that will make me ponder, that will make me think about myself and my place in the world and amongst the people around me. The most interesting things Jesus has to say are about not worshiping God directly, but more indirectly by the way we interact with our fellow human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting, and
That is interesting.
that message gets lost so much. People are so worried about their relationship with God that they sacrifice their relationship with other people for their relationship with God. And Jesus, he preaches the exact opposite of that. He's like, you don't have a relationship with God if your relationship with other people is on the skits. You know, it's so crazy that message is so fundamental to what Jesus teaches, and it's so gone
So
in
gone.
modern Christianity.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, it's 2,000 years later, but still, it's like, how is it we call it, it a Christian church, and the emphasis isn't on, and all the emphasis, I should say, not just a little of it, but all the emphasis isn't on just how you treat other people.
Yeah.
And especially those with whom you disagree. I mean, there could be no, in my mind, the question about God existing or not existing, Jesus being a real person, not a real person, none of that matters if you don't get that fundamental teaching right. And so, that's my biggest
That's very
criticism.
thoughtful. No, it's I agree 100%. It's the view that it has come into view for me in the last 10 years exclusively, that like whatever you like, listen, whatever someone's gender is, whatever their sexual orientation, like what does that matter? Like what it's how you treat people. Like everyone, everyone's people. We're all people. How are we treating people? If we're exclusionary, this person's this and that, you're doing a poor job of treating people. I mean, you just are. Just because they're different than you. Like,
If I can speak directly to Christians right now, especially those who are of the conservative persuasion, who, and by that I just mean those who might not like the whole gender identity movement and things like that. If you don't like those people, you're not Christian. As much as you have done it unto others, you've done it unto me. So if you refuse, even if you refused to use somebody's preferred pronoun,
yeah,
you're no longer Christian, because you've done that to God now. You've now told God you won't use his or hers preferred pronoun, who you believe in. So sorry, you're disqualified. No longer Christian. You're following something else. You're in a religion, that's for sure, but it ain't
this one.
It ain't the one. It ain't the one teaching the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bold, wonderful, to me, incredible statement, because it comes down to the simplicity of it. It's like, if you're casting these people as horrible humans and you're just not part of what Jesus taught. You're literally spitting in the face of that. Like, it's not that hard, man. Like, really, that's not like there's some weird, this isn't the Drake equation to figure out how many, formalized civilizations exist in the cosmos. Let's take this times 3 to the power times 45. Okay, it's pretty simple, man.
Yeah. Jesus laid it out, I mean, he didn't leave He left a lot of room for contemplation
Contemplation.
about how to do that in our lives, how to accomplish these things in our lives. But he didn't leave any question about what is expected. And I think
Yes.
that's just good teaching and good parenting. And I think that that's one of the things I've always tried to emulate when I'm, even when I'm just telling my kids what, chores I want them to
Sure.
do. I don't want there to be any question in my expectation, you know, how you do it, how you get it done. That's up to you. But there's no question about the end result that's expected. And I think Jesus was really good about that. He was just really good about it. Whether it's the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, or
Yep.
or any other parable or things like that he taught. He was just really good about uh, expressing things in a deep, profound, and metaphorical sense, so that there's lots of room for each individual person to figure out how they implement that in their own personal individual life, but the end result's got to be the same,
Yeah.
that you've treated other people well, that you've been a good neighbor.
Yeah. Crazy, right? It's great. Like this radical idea. It's so simple, but is literally being thrown away by especially conservative elements of Christianity, which I would argue is just not Christianity at all.
I
It's
don't think
We
so.
keep calling it conservative Christianity or fundamentalist. It's not Christianity. It just
No.
isn't. It follows none of that. It's something else.
It is, it follows an isolationist America First policy. It's Trumpism
Yeah.
disguised as a religion, which I suppose Trumpism might be a religion at
Right.
this point.
Right.
But I mean, and you know, I'm not trying to demonize people of a conservative political persuasion at all, because that's just not true to say that everybody's the same. Uh, there's even just anecdotally, I can tell you 1,000 conservative Christians I know who, even when they're going to a church that isn't teaching it right, they're doing it right,
Yeah.
because I think fundamentally we're all kind of wired that way, and that's what the Christian guy was trying to argue, is that we're
Yeah.
wired that way because of our faith in God. But
Mm.
I'm just like, I'm sorry. I mean, it just doesn't hold
Yeah.
up. It doesn't hold water, because there's people all throughout the world, of all kinds of beliefs and no belief, that are still wired that way.
Of, of course.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
still just trying to do the best they know how to do. Uh, you know, maybe the best way to reach people is to start talking about our humanity versus our divinity.
Ooh.
That's something I've really concentrated
Ooh.
on. And I think that's what Jesus was so much about, man. I
Simon,
think
that's big. I honestly see. Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. I haven't thought about that. There you go. That's the whole thing. That's the like the crick. The brain's like, what? Like,
So in the last podcast episode I did, I don't know if heard that one yet, but I talk about this a little bit. I say, how much more interesting would it be if Jesus was just a normal guy? He's
yeah.
not the Son of God. How much more interesting is it for a normal guy to do what he did? And he doesn't have any advantage of having a divine heritage.
Yeah.
Um, how much more interesting is it for us to be here and to do the right thing without any hope for any afterlife at all? I mean, how much more interesting is it that we feel so profoundly, but maybe we're just not special? I mean, does that make any sense? I
No, it
don't know if
does.
I'm communicating that really well, but um
Well, it feels like the focus is always on the divinity, but the humanity reveals the divinity.
Yes, yes, you're saying it much better than I am. Thank you very much. That was so much easier.
That was quick, right?
Yeah. Isn't that what Jesus is trying to say? The way you treat other people, exposes, demonstrates whatever the divine. But that is humane everyday things. It's not big things. And we get lost in the idea that Jesus did something so big. As Christians, we get lost in the idea that Jesus did this thing that's so big, and the atoning sacrifice. And for everybody, I'm not trying to diminish that, but at the same time, I want to diminish that at least for a minute here as we contemplate, what if it didn't ever happen? What if Jesus doesn't atone for everybody's sins? What if he's not the savior of the world? Aren't the teachings still good? Shouldn't you still do the things that he taught? So that's the real point I'm getting at. And I think that is the point that Jesus would probably try to tell everybody. Listen, God or no God, you should be treating people right.
Yeah. Right. I mean, most people should be a Jesus fan because of
Yeah.
the humanity.
Yes. But trying to make him so big, so divine, that he is in everything and of everything, the whole Nicene Creed,
Yeah.
I mean, now you're losing people. You're losing the atheists because they don't want to hear all this messaging from, the guy, especially from people who are saying, Jesus, take the wheel because I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
They're dependent upon this other thing that nobody can see and there's no proof of existing. That's not a compelling way to live.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But if you just say, hey, this guy, he came along and he said, no matter what your differences are in nationality or religion, you should love one another.
Yeah.
And no greater love hath man than this, than he lay down his life for another. I mean, simple, easy to understand sayings that we all need to contemplate every day how we put that into practice in the simplest ways.
Yeah. We got deep, man. Really deep. And actually, honestly, it also made me think about that's, I think, one of the greatest burgeoning ideas. And as a practitioner of it, as someone who takes psychedelics, is it creates a larger sense of humanity, which also reveals a larger sense of divinity through the process of it.
Mm.
For it, it doesn't give you spirituality; it gives you more humanity, and then it pulls spirituality within you from it. That's the beauty of psychedelics, and almost anyone who has been a part of it, had ceremonies, trips, is it reveals a better human is in there that wants to be better, but it creates a huge wave of spirituality as a part of that with it. It's the beauty of it. It begins with humanity, and then the monsoon is the spirituality that comes after that.
I love that. And I think that's what most people find enticing about religion. And
Right.
that's why, I always want to hesitate before I criticize any religion
Yeah.
because of that, because people find so much meaning. That monsoon you're describing,
Yeah.
so many people have felt that in their lives that I would never, want to say, um, it's all it's all bunk and nobody should do it and nobody should
Yeah.
believe it. What you and I are saying is that there's a better way to do it.
Yes.
And ironically, the better way to do it was the original way that Jesus said in the first place.
This is a new news, man.
Yeah. This is the glass onion.
This is and it comes back. This is literally the glass onion, the transparency of the thing.
It's so obvious from the get-go what we were supposed to be doing the whole time, doing the thing the whole time, but we let it get too complicated, and we let our longing for the divinity to eclipse the humanity.
Most definitely. Man, this, guys, you know what time it is. It's pump up Simon time. I can't say anything better than that.
Oh,
I don't
man.
want to say anything better. I'm not into one-upsmanship. I just enjoy listening to great things like that. Simon, you are, I like to do this through the form of telling stories of what somebody asked me, and then I tell them about you.
Oh, man, I love it.
This is the best way. Versus, you're a great guy. I mean, that's good too. But another example. So one of my clients was like, I don't think I told you this. We're moving to Colorado.
No,
we're moving to Colorado this summer. I could talk to you about it more offline, but
yeah.
And they said, "Oh, you're gonna miss like a lot of your friends and stuff." I was like, "No." Whatever. Like, I said, "No." I was like, "I like people and stuff." I said, "But a lot of my good friends don't live near me." And I said, "In fact, one of my really great friends I've never met in person.
Yeah. Oh,
Where I
man,
live
isn't
is
that funny?
irrelevant to my friendship level." And I started talking to them about, what we're doing with this and stuff like that. And I think my appreciation of our friendship grows like 10x every time I talk about you with someone else.
Isn't that
It just it grows another level because I'm getting to talk about somebody that I care about. And when they ask me something and you come up, I'm like, well, this means that this is more important to me than I think it is.
Yeah.
Like, because this is what's coming to mind when somebody asks me about friendship or asks me about, my thought process on spirituality or what are movies. It's like this person's invading my existence in a positive way. That sounds negative. It's very positive. I promise.
I just love the way you said it. It was great.
It's very difficult to create friendship off of not having, in-person time. But I feel like that has not been necessary for this.
No,
it has not been, and
it might ruin it.
maybe. But this is a great testament to how wonderful of a person you are, that I feel convicted to talk about you regularly to other people I know, because that's how important you are to me.
I feel the same way. Every time I talk about our conversations, I feel like I kind of light up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm always excited to kind of tell, Shannon what we talked about, just things like that. My best compliment to you is that I come away from these conversations, my mind's revved up and I'm ready to create something.
Yeah.
And I think that is the best compliment I can give anybody, because that means you're interesting. To go back to what we were talking about before, you're compelling, you're interesting. Being with you, talking with you, has, to use a biblical phrase, quickened my mind, and so it comes alive, sparks start flying, and every time we do a podcast, I'm like, okay, I've got rejuvenated ideas that I need to like work with.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Thank you, man. Yeah, I think I feel the same way. So it's like now, especially as we ended on the spiritual talk, I'm like, okay, I got to apply this. Okay, humanity, let it reveal divinity. And like, I really want to ingest that idea because I feel like I want to do that, but I haven't like phrased it the way you phrased it. In a way of like, okay, how do I bottle this in a way that I can really live this in a sense? And I feel like I try to do that. But anyways, there's always
we need to make a t-shirt.
Yeah, we should make it. That's a great t-shirt. Simon, that's a great t-shirt. It's a great t-shirt. We're like Forrest Gump running on the shit happens.
Humanity reveals divinity.
Yeah. That just And I think that's one of the geniuses of life, is like, there are people you're going to spend time with in your life, hopefully that you gain so much from the relationship. I'm getting a lot out of this, like a lot. So it's
I feel
always
like you and I have
worthwhile.
both grown. We've helped
Yeah.
each other grow so much
Yeah.
over the last couple of years that we've been
Yes.
having these conversations, and that's what you want out of a friendship.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the advantage. We talk about being selfish, like the
Yeah.
advantage you get out of a
Yeah.
friendship or something. But it's like you and I don't want anything else from each other except for like to be inspired by great
Yes.
ideas.
Yes. And your move from
That's what we
like
want.
Portland to Alabama was inspiring. Like, who
Oh,
does
that's
that?
cool.
Like,
Well, I love Colorado, so now I have, and you'll be that much closer. So now I
right.
have another excuse to
But
like try and come.
yours is way more extreme than mine.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, really?
yeah.
These are polar opposite places in ideology and feel, generally speaking,
Yeah. No,
and I
it's
like that you go out on a limb, and that is interesting. Washington and Colorado had a lot of same feel in a sense, but they're different places. I get it.
yeah.
But that it was inspiring to me that you did that. I'm just like, I like people who do things that are different and like out there. It's like, even like, I don't know how many times I've told this story about you going to, or whatever, the coffee shop, and you're asking like, when's the last time you've been in love? I've told that story so many times. I told it on one of my recent podcasts to this lady, Cha Wild, who is a yogi, a painter, and a musician.
Oh, I
And
saw the title for that one. I haven't gotten to that one yet.
I talked
You
about
put out
you.
so many. I've got
I
to,
know
oh
it's
man, I've
I'm
got
and I'm
now I've got to
now I'm doing like
watch it.
5 a week. It's crazy. But it's
Yeah.
like, and I referenced you. I was like, you're a lot like my friend Simon, like, because she goes, I just want to skip the small talk. Like, I just want to skip that. I was like,
That's
haven't I heard this before?
brilliant. Yeah. So my twin is out there somewhere.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna reference this talk I had with Simon. Because this person
That is so
clearly is very
funny.
much into the same thing. Like, let's just get through the. I don't want this. I really just don't want this.
It's not interesting. There's nothing compelling about small talk.
That's what she said. Okay, not like that, but that's what she
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
That's what she said. So you're always, there's thoughts about you. It's like things come up, and that's how I want to be. I want people to think of me in the sense of like, hey, he has interesting ideas. He has interesting conversation. He's memorable on some level.
And you are because of your curiosity.
Right.
Somebody paid me that compliment the other day, and they just told me I was really interesting, and I was like, really? I mean, I didn't come up with any of this stuff. I mean, maybe I like took diverse pieces and maybe put them together in some way, but I mean, what's interesting are the ideas that I'm talking about. I'm not interesting. I'm just some, average Joe, but I'm curious like you are curious. So I'm going after ideas that are interesting. And then when I talk about those ideas, people think I'm interesting. Well,
Right.
I mean, no, it's just the ideas. The ideas are
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting ideas, Simon.
Yeah.
So, what an amazing time. Man, this is the magic. Start talking about a movie, it always shifts into something even deeper. That's beautiful.
Oh yeah. And I love that it seems to always happen this way. We need the whole time to get
You need
there.
the whole time.
Whether we had an hour or 2 hours, it like once we're coming to the end, it's like we get there.
We get there. We wrap it up. And that's the glass onion. That was the end of it. I was like, and that's the glass onion.
That was it.
The transparency. It's literally in plain sight, right? Like,
yes.
That's the point. So if you watch Glass Onion, you got a lot out of this, more than you probably thought you're gonna get.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I hope you got more out of this than you did Glass Onion.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Simon, so much, man.
Thank you.